Hey everybody, Curtis from the Three Angry Nerds podcast. Here with you today to talk about a certain game I've been playing, but you know, I play Pokemon competitively. So the whole idea with this video was that we're gonna go through and just dissect all the how do you play Pokemon competitively, and yeah, just fun little video. I thought you guys might enjoy it, so let's get on with the video. So the first thing to keep in mind when you're playing Pokemon competitively, guys, is that there's different meta games for each generation of Pokemon, so they will be changing the rules every so often. So I'm going to be focusing on Generation 6. Now, you may be playing an earlier generation, so I would just want to forewarn you that, not all of this will apply to the earlier generations, but a lot of the same logic will apply. So don't feel too bad if you want to do Generation 5 or 4, or something like that. Just keep in mind that, yeah, it's going to be a different metagame for each one. But like I said, generally speaking, it's going to carry over. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't know too much about Pokemon, and the thing is, this video is going to assume that you know a few of the different elements of Pokemon. I mean, you should know the basics, such as, Pokemon typing, the various abilities and moves, what a certain item's going to do, etc. And the thing is, I'm not going to be going through the basics of Pokemon, I'm going through the basics of online battling, so again, there's going to be a certain assumption here that you know the certain basics of Pokemon. So if not, you might want to go check out either Cerebi is a great site or Bulbapedia, which is two great sites that I use. Now, the most important thing to know when playing competitive Pokemon is that you really need to understand your Pokemon. You can have a Pokemon like Arceus, which is actually a Pokemon with one of the highest base stat totals in the entire game. But if you don't know how to play that Pokemon and play to its strengths and compensate for its weaknesses, then it's not really being used to its full potential. In this sense, all Pokemon have the ability to be great. It's just that, you may have two trainers that can have Pokemon that are on the same level, but they play in wildly various ways. So it's really up to you, as a trainer, to research each Pokemon you want to use. This is probably the biggest hurdle for competitive play, as it means there's going to be a lot of research on your part and a lot of effort that needs to be put in to really understand what each Pokemon can do. But if you're willing to do so, there's a lot of great potential for you and your team. When playing Pokemon, there are two commonly held formats that are followed by the community. One is called VGC, and one is called Smogon. Now, VGC is the one I'll touch on first, and VGC is a tournament format where officially it's actually sanctioned and endorsed by both Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. So unlike the other one that we'll talk about, Smogon, there actually is, a certain amount of follow-up from Nintendo in terms of this being the official channel for tournament play, which, sort of, I think most people play with Smogon. I play Smogon myself, but I certainly can see why people would like to follow in VGC. Now, VGC varies in a few different ways from Smogon. The main difference is that VGC follows a double battles format primarily. That's not to say that you won't see a single battle format, but typically speaking with VGC, you're actually going to be fighting 2v2. Now, what this means is that you need, basically to have two Pokemon out at a time. And this is fine, but you also have to now compensate for having the second Pokemon and for having two Pokemon on your opponent's team. So it does kind of actually create a bit of a dynamic where you have to now think of what your Pokemon is not only doing for itself against the opponent, but also what it's doing for the Pokemon next to it. So it does change up the strategy quite a bit. Also, too, I mean, as you can imagine, it's just very different if you've played Smogon to now have a Pokemon team that actually has to play with doubles, but it's doable. It's just that generally speaking, most people will kind of stick with one or the other. You don't see too many people doing both Smogon and VGC. The other major difference is levels. So in VGC tournaments, Pokemon are capped at actually 50 or level 50. Meanwhile, with Smogon, it's actually capped at a level 100. So there's that as well, which I think a lot of other people, kind of get a little bit put off by. If you have a level 100 Pokemon, its stats are now going down to level 50, which can kind of be a bit of a jarring thing for a lot of Smogon players. Now, for me at least, I find that the biggest difference with VGC is that actually for the longest time they did not allow legendary Pokemon. Smogon did allow it in the tiers, which we'll get to in a bit, but only recently did VGC change its ruling to reflect that trainers can bring in Pokemon of a legendary Pokemon status. The thing is that there's only a few legendary Pokemon allowed, so not all of them. And, the thing is, this kind of changes things up a bit. Smogon rules, which we'll get to in a bit, does allow legendaries, albeit with restrictions. But, it's maybe a sign of the times that VGC is trying to change its ways to better match up with Smogon's rules. Now, on to Smogon, which I think, again, is primarily what I play. It's primarily what a lot of people play from what I see. I mean, I know there's going to be people who play VGC rules, but generally speaking, I don't see too many people playing VGC. But that's definitely probably going to be changing with the new ruling. But, Smogon's definitely the go-to. And if you are going to be playing Pokemon competitively, playing Smogon is probably the way that you're going to probably want to start off with. Not only is it easier for having to only focus on single battles, but also too there's the tier system, which we'll actually get to in a bit. So as I mentioned, yes, the big thing here is the tiers. So how it works with VGC is that you can play any Pokemon you want as long as it's not legendary, which again changed. The thing with Smogon is, each Pokemon has a tier that they belong to. And how the tiers work is that, a Pokemon in a higher tier can't go and fight with Pokemon that are in a lower tier unless you have a Pokemon that qualifies for that tier. I'll explain more on that in a bit, but basically that's how it works for now, is basically you have to have a Pokemon that registers in a certain tier. So you could have a Pokemon that's all in a lower tier and you can just play in that tier, but if you have a Pokemon that's all of a sudden in a higher tier, you now have to play in that higher tier. So in a way it's more fair. I know some people definitely don't like the added rules that they've done with Smogon, but for me personally as a player, I find that it's actually easier to understand better of what Pokemon goes in what tier. If I'm bringing this Pokemon into a tier, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad choice, but it's just a bit of an odd choice, all things considering. So the one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize about Smogon is that when you look at it from the outside, VGC looks like this grand, open format. You're allowed any Pokemon in as long as it's not a legendary. And the thing with Smogon is when you look at it, it does look like it's more restricting. So, only certain Pokemon are allowed in certain tiers. There's a ban list for certain moves and whatnot. And in that sense, it kind of gets to be a little tough because people are now saying, well, I used to be able to play whatever Pokemon I want. Smogon's saying, no, I can't use this Pokemon. Not exactly true. The thing with Smogon is that, they base this information off of two things, both democratic voting by members of the community, but also two stats. So, for instance, a Pokemon with a lower amount of usage, they statistically track that, and what they do is they'll then say, okay, this Pokemon's actually not really used at all, so we're going to put it in a lower tier. But a Pokemon that's just abused by everybody and used, all over the place, like, say, for instance, Arceus or Mewtwo, which is a Pokemon that a lot of people like to use. They're both very powerful Pokemon in their own right. People are then going to say, well, actually, if Arceus and Mewtwo are highly used, we're going to put them in the Uber tier. So it just sort of means that, if you want to use a Pokemon, you're not going to be, choosing Caterpie and going up against a Mewtwo or something like that, which would obviously be just total crushed. I mean, never know, I guess. I mean, really, that's the great thing about Smogon, is that you can have a Pokemon in a lower tier, you can try to bring it up into a higher tier. And I mean, in that sense, if you can do it, power to you, that's great. You can take that Pokemon that everyone had written off as being, Pokemon that just nobody really used, and all of a sudden you make it your own. You make it a Pokemon that's highly used in competitive play. So there is that aspect of it as well. It's not to say that your Pokemon is totally useless or that it's a bad Pokemon, it's just that it's rarely, if ever, used. Now, Smogon does have some rules that make it a little bit different than the standard Pokemon fare. So, there's a few clauses. One, which I always thought it was no-brainer, but some people, I guess, don't know this, but in Smogon, you actually can only have one of a certain species of Pokemon. So, for instance, if you want to play with Arceus, you can't have 6 Arceus on a team. You can only have one. This is just basically to lower the amount of abuse. Again, this is all democratically voted on, so people are seeing trends and they say, actually, this is a Pokemon that gets abused quite often. If somebody has 6 of this Pokemon, they're just going to crush everyone in their path, right? So it's about, putting some limitations on that's for the betterment of the community. Also, as well, there's a few other clauses. There's one such as you can only put one Pokemon to sleep at a time. You can't put another Pokemon to sleep unless the other one wakes up or it faints. Another clause as well is the evasion clause, so there are certain moves like Double Team are minimized that can't be used simply because those moves have been found to be uncounterable. So people have actually voted those out. And again, these are, going across all tiers. They're just basically rules saying, these moves can't be used. And it's always good to keep up to date with it. I mean, I used Greninja actually for the longest time, but Greninja as a Pokemon recently got banned from competitive play, so I can't even use Greninja anymore. So stuff like that sort of makes it, you have to keep up with the rules. And that's why I don't want to go through all the rules. I want to go through some of the ones that are probably most applicable to you guys, but yeah, there are definitely quite a few rules to follow with Smogon. And again, I don't find it too limiting, but it is about you making sure that you're up to date and that your team reflects these rules properly. So with the rules sort of out of the way, I wanted to touch on, the different tiers of Pokemon. So the first one we'll sort of touch on is the highest tier, and that is the Uber tier. So the Uber tier is Pokemon that are used quite commonly, like the most common Pokemon in the game, but also two legendaries are included in here. So legendaries are not going to be included in any other tier. They're always going to be the Uber tier. So if you have a legendary Pokemon or a Pokemon in this Uber tier, you can only play in the Uber tier. You cannot play in any of the other tiers. And once we get to the other tiers, I'll explain that more. So the next up is the overused tier. Now these Pokemon can be used in the Uber tier and also played in the overused tier, but any of the below tiers they cannot. So again, these are also Pokemon that are more commonly used and not as powerful as say a legendary Pokemon, but still very powerful Pokemon. So as you can see here, Tyranitar and Ninetales being included in that tier. So next up in the list of tiers is the underused Pokemon. So these are Pokemon that are still pretty popular Pokemon, but they are not as commonly used as say an Uber and overused. Once again, you can use an underused in the Uber tier and the overused tier as well as the underused tier, but you can't use it in any of the other below tiers. Next up is the rarely used tier. The name kind of explains it all, in itself. These are Pokemon that are rarely used. These Pokemon you can use in the Uber, overused, and underused tier, but you cannot use them in the last tier, which is the never used tier. Again, these are Pokemon that are not as widely used, but they still have some usage with a lot of players. Finally, there's the never used tier. This is the tier that rarely, well, pretty much never used by anybody, but again, these Pokemon are there. If you want to use them, you can use them in any of the tiers, because if you want to, you can take them all the way up to the Uber tier if you really wanted to. But, somebody in the Uber tier won't be able to come in and play on the never used tier. It's just that if you're bold enough to take this Pokemon all the way to the top, then so be it. So now that we've got all these out of the way, I want to basically go through, an idea, more so of a summary of how it works. So if you have one Pokemon that's in the Uber tier, for instance, in the case that I'm giving here, I use Mewtwo. Mewtwo's an Uber. I mean, I have to go play in the Uber tier, even though I have Ninjask, who's a never used Pokemon, Skarmory, who's an overused, Shuckle, overused, Florges, underused, and Talonflame overused. I still have to play in the Uber tier. And again, it's really my choice. I mean, I could go in with all Ubers, but these are Pokemon that I like to play with, and I have a pretty good idea of their strategy, so I stick with them. Even though it's a bit of a risk me going into the Uber tier, generally speaking, I can do okay. So with these Pokemon that I list, I mean, it really comes down to how do I use each Pokemon. So, there are actually different rules in Pokemon that you need to play with. So, you can't just have a Pokemon just come in and not have a role that it needs to play. Each Pokemon is going to play a different role in your team. So with my team that I just gave the example of, Mega Mewtwo Y, he's what they call a special sweeper. So his special attack is just out the roof. I mean, it's pretty high, and also too, he has a pretty good boost to speed. So the thing is, he's going to attack first, and generally speaking, because of his special attack so high, I'm going to use special attacks with him to deal a lot of damage. So in this case, he's he hits pretty hard. A lot of times I'll open with Mega Mewtwo Y. Sometimes I'll open with another Pokemon. But generally speaking, I mean, he can generally KO quite a few of the different opponents that I play. Next up is Ninjask, who there's actually a role for this. They call it the Baton Passer. So how Ninjask operates is that he is going to actually boost his own attack stats. and then use Baton Pass to pass those stats on to another Pokemon. Now, I have a few Pokemon that I can use this on, but the main one I use it on is Talonflame, who I'll actually touch on in a bit, who actually gets a significant boost from Baton Pass. So what I need to do is use Ninjask to boost up the stats, send them off to Talonflame, then Talonflame can actually use them to KO a ton of Pokemon. Again, I'll get to Talonflame in a bit, but that's Ninjask's role entirely, is to just boost stats, send them off to another Pokemon. Now, next up is Skarmory. Skarmory is an interesting Pokemon in that he is a spiker. So he has a few different moves. Two of them are Stealth Rock and Spikes. And what he'll do is lay those down, use Whirlwind, and basically anytime he whirlwinds, people are going to take damage. There is a few different Pokemon that can clear these hazards, but generally speaking, I've found that not too many people carry them. So it's actually very easy to set it up and just have those Pokemon take damage every time they come in. So that's actually Skarmory's role, is just pure spiker. Next up is Florigus. Whose role is basically a healer. She knows aromatherapy, so she can actually remove all status effects from the entire team. So if I've got a couple of people who are, maybe paralyzed or asleep, she can clear all of that. So that's her role. Very simple, very to the point. Next up is Shuckle. Shuckle is just a pure toxic tank, so he can take a ton of damage and uses toxic and basically waits it out. I mean, once you hit your opponent with toxic, that's it. You can just take hits. You're going to be having some recovery there. And you're basically just waiting for that Pokemon to faint, which is super easy. I mean, kind of more of a stalling Pokemon as well in that sense, but it's actually, does its job pretty well, especially on Pokemon that are very weak to toxic. It's actually just easy to just watch them faint. And finally, there's Talonflame, who, as I mentioned before when I was talking about Ninjask, is a pure physical sweeper. So what he's going to do is, he's going to just go in there and he's going to have those based up attack stats, and he's just going to go through and just clear through all the Pokemon that has physical weakness against physical attacks. So that's actually Talonflame's. Talonflame is sort of the equivalent to Mewtwo. Mewtwo is a special sweeper, so if a Pokemon has a low special defense, special attacks go in to clear it no problem. Equally, if a Pokemon has a low standard defense, it's actually going to have a low defense against Talonflame's attacks, which actually makes it quite a valuable Pokemon in that sense. You want to make sure that your Pokemon have ways of attacking against both types of defense. So that's why everyone recommends you have a special sweeper and a physical sweeper, like Talonflame and Mewtwo. Now you may be wondering, what is all this that you're listing? I mean, it doesn't look like Pokemon. It's actually a program that I use called Pokemon Showdown. And the great thing about Pokemon Showdown is that, again, before you can go through and actually build up your team of Pokemon, you can actually just test it all out in Pokemon Showdown. Then you go into the actual game and do your training and get the moves that you want and so on and so forth. But it's a great way to basically plan out your team. And the thing is too is it actually has a way of actually playing battles against other people online. So in a sense, it's almost like playing Pokemon online. So it's a great way of testing things out and finding flaws in your system. And there's a lot of times too that ends up working out for you too. So do give Pokemon Showdown a try. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I can explain to you guys how to play competitive Pokemon, but really the best way is make a team, kind of get your roles set, and then just go online and just get into battles and just see how it goes. I mean, you're going to learn pretty quickly if it's working or if it's not, and if it's not, just you got to find a way to make it work, right? So really, that's how you play Pokemon competitively. Really, is just try and try again. I mean, you're going to fail a couple times. There's going to be a Pokemon that you love that you're going to realize doesn't fit on your team. You're going to have to take them off, and that's just how competitive battling works. I mean, I loved using Greninja, but actually Smogon banned Greninja, so I had to replace him. So I ended up replacing him with Mewtwo. So I mean, that's just how it works. Is you gotta sometimes just face facts that the Pokemon that you want to use is not the Pokemon that you need to use. So there's that as well. Well, that's it, guys. That's how you play Pokemon competitively. Hopefully this guy gets you right off on the right foot. You get to, go through and start playing some games. I mean, that's how it starts. I mean, for me, it started back in Generation 3, actually, in the Fire Red, Leaf Green days. where yeah, I learned all the meta game, and it took me a while to really get the hang of it, but I think once you get it and you understand it, it's a lot of fun. And once you start building your team and you get a really good team going, it can be a lot of fun. So, yeah, guys, that's it. If you like this, please do check out more videos on our channel. We've got Let's Plays, we've got reviews of Fan Force Deck that are just as long as the movie itself. But that's what people love about us, right? We have the podcast too every Thursday. It gets uploaded. We have the main show, the Three Angry Nerds podcast, and then we also have the Nerds in Love podcast. So do check out both of those as well. Thanks so much for watching the video, guys. And if you'd like to see more, please leave a comment down below. I would really appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys.